He says, by this, now we're back in 1 John. He says, by this you know the spirit of Elohim, the wind, the breath that's coming from Elohim, the intrinsic nature of Elohim. Every wind or every breath that confesses that Yeshua Messiah has come in the flesh is of Elohim. The idea of confessing is declaring openly or asserting. This is connected to the idea of a promise or covenant. Let's just drop to verse 15 for a second. Whoever confesses, asserts, covenants that Yeshua is the Son of Elohim, Elohim stays in him and he in Elohim. So it's not just speaking a word out of your mouth and making a declaration. It's a declaration with the idea of like a covenant, a promise. So every spirit that asserts and declares and covenants that Messiah Yeshua has come in the flesh is of Elohim. And every spirit that does not confess that Yeshua Messiah has come in the flesh is not of Elohim. And this is the spirit of the anti-Messiah, which you have heard, and is coming, is now already in the world. Now, bear in mind that this did not just happen in a vacuum. This is exactly what Paul's talking about in Ephesians 4. This is connected to doing what's right in his sight and following the commands and obeying his commands and staying in him. It's not just Messiah exists. He came, he died, he's resurrected, he's sitting at the right hand. Ta-da, I confessed. It has to do with everything John's been talking about. And all of it's linked to our behavior and our choices. And it's all linked to what he just talked about in chapter 3 about righteousness. So when it says Messiah has come into the world, the light has come into the flesh. Into your flesh, light has to come into it. Messiah has to come into it. The truth has to come into it. The Torah has to come into it. The Word has to come into it. So when you're confessing that Messiah has come into the flesh, not that he just came in flesh, like he came and put on a flesh suit, but can you confess that Yeshua Messiah has come into your flesh? And all that means. Not what you heard every day and every week and Sunday, is it? And every spirit that does not confess that Yeshua has come into their flesh, that's not of Elohim. So how does Messiah come into your flesh? If you love me, guard my commands. John 14, we talked about that last time in part 54, right? That's how he says, and I will be with you. What? The Spirit of truth. I will not leave you orphans. So we're confessing that all of that is coming into our flesh. The Torah, the truth, the light, the Word has all come into you. Can you confess that? Can you declare that? That Spirit is now in you. See, you can't declare it when it's not true. But can you declare that? He says that's the spirit that's of Elohim. The one that cannot, that's of the anti-Messiah. So, in other words, the one saying, I don't need that in me, that's an anti-Messiah thinking. I could be in him without that being in me. Well, that's just not possible. That's not the way it works. You can't be in him without him being in you. And by him, that's all that he is. Light, truth, the Word, the Torah, etc. Okay? All of that has to be in you. Now, can you confess that? That is the spirit of Elohim. Not what you've always heard. Oh, no, we're of Elohim because we confess that Messiah lived and died and was resurrected and now sitting at the right hand. So now, boom, we're in. That is not what this is talking about. Not in the context of everything else John has said up to this point. You can't get there if you read everything straight through in the context. And if you keep going through chapter 4 into chapter 5, he never changes his point. He's still talking about how this then will manifest in how we treat each other. The love part will be connected, and that love is part of what he's talking about, how it comes into you. His intrinsic nature, the spirit of Elohim has to come in you, which is the love part, which is submitted to his authority and submitted to his instruction to do what's pleasing in his sight, which how we treat each other is either pleasing or not pleasing in his sight, depending on if we're doing what he said in terms of how we treat each other or not. It's all completely congruent to itself. I mean, the context maintains all the way through.